Ken, if I could just comment, the Supreme Court case that you were referring to earlier dealing with direction, what the court held was the opportunity the job gave the employee to use his or her power is one of the items that need to look at. They had about 5 different things, as you mentioned. The extent to which the wrongful act may have furthered the employer's aim, the extent to which the wrongful act was related to the working relationship between the employee and the victim, the power conferred on the employee in relation to the victim, and the vulnerability of potential victims. That's today. What's going to happen as this gets judicially considered in the future, who knows where we're going to be. So I think it is something that there may be changes, but if there are changes, the idea is that they're constructive for protecting children.
Clarifying things really as much as anything. Yeah, because they're pretty flexible standards. I mean, we are dealing with a moving line a little bit in interpretation a lot of times too. One of the things that decision told us, those 5 points though, was the more intimate the position, in other words, the more intimately you're interacting with children in your programs, the more likely you're going to be held to the highest standard of care. Question is the church protected by a lay member abusing a child on church property? And I'm going to guess that what they mean by a lay member is not a lay leader, but just a member of the church. I think that's what the question is. And I'll give a real quick stab at an answer here from an insurance perspective, and then maybe if you want to give a legal perspective, because I've seen similar cases to this, and the question really is, okay, our leadership, our supervisors didn't commit the abuse, but someone was abused on our property, right? And the person that abused them wasn't in a position of authority or trust. Could we be sued? I think the answer is yes, and the way that they would try to sue is just to say that maybe there was an issue with the premises or the operations or, basically just monitoring the building. How could this happen? They would, certainly in a statement of claim, I think a good plaintiff's lawyer representing the victim would try to figure out a way to make the church responsible for what takes place on this premises. It's a harder negligence to prove in a court, but it's still a possibility. I don't know if you have any comments.
I think there's always, the axiom in law is when in doubt, sue everybody. And ultimately you try to find out where the blame lies. So I don't think there's any uncertainty as to whether the church is going to be brought into the action. I think that they will be. I think their defense is going to be, have they acted to reflect the standard that's expected of the church in protecting the children? Right. And if that standard has been met and they can demonstrate it, then that's their defense.
Good practical question here. There seems to be a lack of interest or delays from the police department in regards to requests for police checks, even after using their forms and sending the necessary fee. Do you have any advice as to how to expedite these checks? And I think in this particular case, the church has members coming from 2 jurisdictions, I think one from a Metro division and one from Peel division. So any comments about the practical issues and challenges of getting police checks in a timely fashion?
That's unfortunate. I'm sorry that some people are faced with that situation, especially when you're dealing with different services. I'm not sure how long, for example, Toronto Police Service takes in getting a police check to you. If you are finding roadblocks, I would suggest that you speak to the supervisor of that person that you're dealing with.
I'm not sure if you mentioned earlier, Ken, but there are services available where you can get a very quick turnaround. And one of those is one that we offer, and it's sourced through BackCheck. It's powered through BackCheck. I did one the other day for Canadian Baptist Ministries, and it was an e-invite, and I received the criminal record check back in 32 minutes. And it taps right into CPIC, which is the national database from the RCMP, and it includes a vulnerable position scan, which is the pardon cases. The cost is higher than going directly to a police station in some situations, but what you are receiving is just that quick turnaround and that national database criminal record check.
International, they could do the US as well.
Yes, right. BackCheck, we are able to do it with international. And it is now available both through the traditional format of faxing in the permission form from the individual and also an e-invite where you send an email with an invitation to do it and their identity is confirmed through Equifax.
Ken, could I just add, I don't want to be pessimistic, but I want you to understand that criminal records are not always perfect.
Thank you.
All right?
Thank
Here's how they come about. I would be prosecuting the case, the decision would come down, I would sit there and write it while I'm reading the next file to try and get accurately what the judge had said. The court officer wouldn't be in the room, but would come in 20 minutes later and say, well, Long, what happened? Well, read my file. Well, I'm sorry, sometimes I miss details, but it went from me with my errors to that officer, the court officer, then went to the RCMP, that got into CPIC, and everybody's carrying the error through. So I frankly am a little skeptical of criminal records right now, and I've cross-examined hundreds of people on their criminal records and found out that a lot of them are honest when they say, no, Mr. Lund, I didn't do that. So we've got to be a little bit careful about them and don't assume that they're 100% correct all the time. Sorry, just a caution, I think we should remember.
I'm going to add to that because Bruce makes an excellent point. We cannot put our hat solely on the criminal record check. It is a tool that you use in your safety plan, but it's not the only tool in your toolbox. Remember that sexual abuse, child abuse is a very unreported crime. You have many cases there that will never, ever be spoken of. That doesn't mean that that person was not involved in something. Certainly do it. It's certainly a form of due diligence that we can do. We do the criminal record checks, but do not put solely all your faith in that.
Thank you. That is an important point too. I'm not sure if this question is related specifically to abuse, but it is more of an insurance question, so I'll direct it to Judi. The question is, what about door-to-door evangelization or evangelism? Is a church or Christian charity covered for that? And does it need to be specified in the insurance policy?
So are we talking about two people going, or people going into homes? Is that what they're getting at?
Door-to-door evangelization.
Well, when we look at the example of Jesus, he sent them out 2 by 2. So just to give you some caution, go 2 by 2. You know, getting yourself into somebody's home and maybe the parents leave and there's a minor or there's teenagers, that's a really dangerous position to put yourself in because you open yourself up to allegations. If you've got someone with you, you have a witness, try to meet people outside of their home in a public location, especially for kids and youth ministry. I'm not sure exactly what they mean by 2 by 2 or by door to door, so I don't know if that answers the question or not.
Thank you. And on that subject, sort of to make it a broader subject, I think sort of gone are the days, or should be gone, of the youth pastor meeting teenagers by themselves. You know, think about this for a second. You've got somebody just out of Bible college. How old are they? Maybe 19, 20, 21. They're leading this group. Now, who's in their group? Older teenagers? Let's say older teenage girls. They're under his supervision. Interesting question would be, is it ever right for him to have some sort of a relationship, physically, sexually, intimately? He's actually now in a position of trust and authority. Something that seemed innocent, like in a different age. You know, it's how people got married. It's how my parents' generation got married, right? I mean, in church settings, that was quite common. I don't know if you had any comments about, you know, that, or even the idea of just meeting in places where you're alone. And the other thing, too, is people representing us, employees, volunteers. Are we not sort of leading them like lambs to the slaughter in some ways when we don't equip them? Make sure that there are two people. Think about the people that come in, the kids come into our programs. Some of those kids can be from pretty tough areas. They've already started using the system. They know how to use the system. Some kids have made false allegations. It's a habit for them. They want to cause trouble for other people. We don't think about those things because it's not our world, but it's the world. This is a very good question because it's a question we get in our office, and I'm sure from a legal perspective you get this as well. If you are aware of a pedophile who comes to your church and you're in a position of leadership at your church, how can you make parents who may not see red flags aware in light of privacy laws? Now, this question could have been asked a number of ways. It could have been asked different circumstances. You know somebody's a convicted pedophile. They're either just attending your services or now suddenly they want to be in your Sunday school. Even the fact that they're on your premises is giving you a lot of concern. It's like, again, it's like that hot potato. It's landed in your lap. It's not like you can do nothing. You need to do something. And how do you balance things like invasion of privacy, breaches of confidentiality, what you know may or may not be true, and yet really, as a leader, you got to do something. Any comments from a leader perspective?
I'm going to begin and then I'm going to give it to Dave. But there is a case study and plan to protect on this very issue, and confidentiality is really critical in this issue, and it's on a need-to-know basis. And there are organizations out there like Prison Fellowship that are doing an amazing ministry, so they will come to our churches. However, when you know that there's a convicted pedophile, the first thing we say is, one, they should not be working directly with children and youth, and you want to limit their access to the parts of your church where children and youth will be. In many cases, and the situation and case study and plan to protect was that someone was identified to greet that pedophile when they came onto the premises. They were always aware when the convicted pedophile was there. That individual was told they could not come to the church when there was a high volume of children, such as a vacation Bible school or a day camp was on. They also were, it was a pedophile that was instructed, along with their accountability partners at the church, that they were not to have access and develop relationships and friendships with people in the church that had children under the age of 12. And key people in the church, such as the Sunday school superintendent, the children's pastor, the key individuals were informed of the situation to keep their eyes open. Want to add to that or change it?
No, I think the one thing you have to be concerned about as well is that the convicted pedophile has rights as well. And that's the balancing act. And you can end up creating a damage claim against the church by the individual who's the convicted pedophile if, in fact, information is improperly disclosed. And I think you have to be very careful in that regard. It's been said that the church is the last harbinger of pedophiles because it operates on the basis of forgiveness and grace. You've got to be careful that while our theology allows for forgiveness, that we also have to make sure that that's not at the expense of our children.
I just want to add that, you know, pedophiles want access, they want to isolate, and they want to control. If you present your policy in your church, it's often spoke of, it's well known, you're putting up roadblocks for him to be able, or her, to have access. And that's what you want to do. It's just like you lock your house and you put your bars in your windows of your house. You're trying to prevent break and enter, right? It's the same thing. The more policies that you have in place, the education and the training that you do, and I'll also want to add, your safety protection policy shouldn't be a secret from the kids. They are the major stakeholder in it. You need to talk to them about safety and what you're doing and the policies around that. Invite them in, empower them. They make the best witnesses. So all that being said, having a good safety plan in place that is spoken of, that is perhaps posted, those are excellent roadblocks that you're putting up right at the beginning.
That plan to protect document is a public document. We so often hear about it being something that's reviewed and discussed at the board level with the teachers. It needs to be, just as Joanne said, it's got to be disclosed and publicly shared. Everyone needs to know how it works. Our school systems teach our children what their rights are. And I think the church should be no different. The kids should be fully aware of how this is to work. The parents need to be fully engaged and committed to it. And I think if it's adapted and adopted by everyone, hopefully it creates a safe environment.
We've just printed, and you can help yourself to them if you use Plan to Protect on our table, our posters. Really what we want to do is begin to communicate to the community and to your congregation that you do have a plan to protect, and who to contact if they want to see that copy of your policy, and begin to tell both your community and the people in the church what your policy is. So those posters are available at the table.